and welcome to iCritic Live. This is the podcast where we discuss entertainment, pop culture, and life in between. And we are actually doing it live this time. And it's for news that was pretty exciting to me that I heard last week. And I know everyone's probably going to comment on the Monsters University. And yes, it is because of the Disney news. We will talk about that tomorrow. But for the time being, I want to bring attention to this little company called AnimeEigo, and their catchphrase was the best movies you will ever read. This is one of the oldest anime companies out there. I was renting AnimeEigo tapes from Blockbuster and Hollywood, Bubblegum Crisis, Otaku no Video, and they've been doing a lot of Kickstarter stuff recently, but they were bought by what I actually kind of consider like the professional fan of anime, a guy who has turned his hobby into a profession. I mean, look, people like you and I, we talk about turning our profession to hobby, our hobby into a profession. This guy actually did it, and that is Justin Savakis. Thank you so much for joining me, Justin.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right. So, oops, we accidentally did that. There we go. Better. By the way, do you like my background? I found a very old AnimeEigo, magazine scan. I don't know how it looks, but
oh wow, yeah, that is from a very specific time. I'm guessing 92 or 93.
Yeah,
judging by what those titles are.
I actually had the magazine that had this ad in there because.
But by the way, aren't you happy those prices aren't what we're charging today?
Oh yeah, no, like
that's for one OVA or 2 episodes, by the way.
Yeah, so yeah, like when people like say like, oh, Crunchyroll is like raising their subscription from $55 to $100, I'll just go back to piracy. I mean, for the record, folks, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I still look back. It's like, guys, I remember buying VHS tapes for $30 and getting 1 or 2 episodes. $100 for a whole year of as much anime as I want. I can still stomach that, even if I don't agree with why they did it.
Right, and it's one of those things that back then nobody knew what this was going to sell. If it was going to sell 200 copies, if it was going to sell 1,000 copies, and also you have to remember VHS for sale. Not every movie was for sale. There was a handful of big blockbusters that were made available for sale, but most of it was priced for rental, which meant that they only really expected rental stores to buy them. So they would only sell like 1,000 copies to, all the rental shops that wanted to carry it. And that meant they were priced at $89.99.
Yeah, that's why early Disney tapes like Pinocchio and stuff were like, they might have even been more than 89 because they're Disney, they can charge more. But yeah, I remember those prices. My parents would get the VHS player and they would mostly rent them because why are you going to pay $90 for ET? So yeah, and I also remember, like, I'm totally dating myself now, but like I remember when I first started buying anime VHS tapes, like how the dub and sub debate was really quite intense because it's like you could buy it dubbed and get like 3 or 4 episodes for $30, or you could buy it subtitled for the same price, but you usually get 2 because the subtitles didn't sell as much.
Exactly, or the dub would be $5 to $10 cheaper.
Right, that too. Sometimes the dub was cheaper. So you and I remember this time period.
We do. In vivid detail.
In vivid detail. And
imagine had we put all that money that we spent on anime VHS into like a savings account or something. We'd be rich.
Or Starbucks stock or something like that. I mean, $5 coffees. That was never going to work, right?
Just an ETF, just an ETF. We would have made out like bandits. Oh well.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna lie. I do sometimes look at like that Sailor Moon Blu-ray that cost me $50, and it's like, I remember when I spent more than $50 for 4 tapes and 8 episodes, and they weren't even uncut.
Yep, I remember very well. Yep. Luckily, I didn't go too nuts on the VHS. I saved my complete splurging until the DVD era, but it was even VHS fan subs were expensive because blank VHS tapes were expensive.
Right, I remember VKLL. He was a fan subber, and he would charge $15 plus shipping. Oh, and by the way, it needed to be a money order. You couldn't write a check.
Yeah, that's not. He was definitely making some profit with $15 a tape. That's insane.
Now, do you know what I'm talking about, or we're?
Oh yeah. Do you know I was a VHS fan subber?
I do know that you were a VHS fan subber. So.
Yeah, so I knew that whole scene. My group was Kodoche Anime, and we only charged like $6 a tape.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, but yeah, wow. So I'm talking to someone who actually remembers who VKLL is. Like,
I do.
You are my ideal guest right now.
We are aging rapidly here.
Can we reminisce about how excited we were about discovering anime, and then one of our next tapes was unfortunately MD Geist, and we almost decided, maybe this isn't for me after all.
Oh, okay, so MD Geist wasn't one of my, I was pretty firmly into it by the time I actually watched MD Geist, and I had heard enough friends shit talk MD Geist. By the way, can I swear?
For this episode, you can.
Got it. Okay. I'd had enough friends shit talk MD Geist that I kind of knew what I was getting into. But my second anime was actually a movie called Harmageddon, which on paper should look like a good film. It's directed by Rintaro. It's got character designs by Katsuhiro Otomo. It's not great. It's just aged very, very poorly, and that almost killed it for me. But I feel like everyone has that where they dive headfirst into their first title, their mind is blown, they go for number 2 or number 3, and they're just like, oh, not all of this is good.
Yeah, but MD Geist was a special kind of bad, especially when you're renting from Blockbuster and there was only like 9 tapes you could pick from in the first place, and that one was everywhere for some reason.
Well, it was because, the reason for that was because at that point, the company that got anime VHS into Blockbuster, who first kind of managed to puncture that wall, was Central Park Media. And Central Park Media at that point was distributing for everybody else because nobody else had the business acumen to actually do it. Everyone else was just kind of a fan selling out of magazines. So they basically made an just like this package deal where they sold Blockbuster a starter kit of anime, and they sold, however many Blockbusters there were in the country, 2,000 of this kit. And of course, MD Geist was CPM President John O'Donnell's favorite anime because it was trashy and violent and had boobs and had like Mad Max vibes. And he loved to proclaim that he had no taste. So as you know, MD Geist became his logo, or if you prefer, corporate spokes mecca.
I remember like on the manga tapes, like you'd see that crummy looking soldier CGI thing, and at one point I'm like,
oh, that lasted well into the DVD era, my friend.
Yeah, I was like, that guy looks familiar, and then I realized it was MD Geist, and it's like, who decided to make that guy their mascot?
Well, John O'Donnell is his favorite anime, and nobody else's. But time being the infinite loop back that it is, at Discotech, we still get a lot of people asking for it.
Is it currently in production still?
It is not, although the rights actually lie with the corpse of ADV Films, which still exists on paper. So that's who to bug for it.
So just to settle this for everyone who's a Discotech fan, is anyone at Discotech interested in reviving MD Geist, or do they all feel that one should lie?
Oh, we put out emails, but they're not returned, so we didn't really try very hard past that.
I don't know how hard it's worth trying, to be honest.
Exactly. Although, okay, so you know how a few years ago we found all that the vault at Tokyo Laboratory, Tokyo Genzo Show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, MD Geist was in there.
Oh.
Unfortunately, we couldn't get, we didn't have the rights, and Tokyo Genzo Show was closed since then. By the way, it's not the sequel or the director's cut; it's just the original OVA.
Okay.
And now Tokyo Genzo Show is closed. We don't know what happened to the contents of the vault, if someone was able to claim it or whatnot. So that window may have closed. We don't know.
Yeah, I'd be very conflicted about that one, because with the recent discussion about how important physical media is to preserve things, by the way, release Coyote versus Acme for all my Warner Brothers fans, but a title like that, it's like, but it's so bad. What are we preserving here?
I would preserve it just for the shits and giggles. The thing is, I wouldn't pay very much money for it is the problem, and I don't know how many I would sell. So that's one of those things where it's just like, it was a big title. It actually made the Billboard Hot 100 video list back in the day. So I don't know how much nostalgia there is for it. There might have been a lot of watch it once and go, oh, what have I done? But who knows? It's so hard to tell with a lot of these shows.
Yeah, there must be some if you're getting emails about it, but I do think that's a title where if someone's going to buy it and put it in, they're probably going to have a bunch of friends and a couple beers around and just go like, boy, this is what we watched when we were a kid.
You could do a lot worse. I mean, now, have you watched it recently, like in the last 5-10 years?
No, I just saw it once, and I told myself you couldn't pay me $10 to watch that again, which I guess if you were to release it on Blu-ray for $20, that would be $30 too expensive.
Honestly, it has a bizarre, weird, ironic, nostalgic charm to it. It does. Is it good? Oh, absolutely not. Is it kind of charming in that hand-drawn, oh God, these guys didn't know what they were doing, so bad it's good sort of way? Kinda.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like the Xanadu effect, as I call it, where it's like, yeah, it's bad, but there's something ironically charming about it at the same time.
Yeah, and are you just watching the screen riveted? No, but you might have it on while you're on your laptop refreshing Twitter or whatnot.
Yeah. You see, I was young enough where the VHS player was downstairs, and so watching it, I think I was just looking at the stairs to the house, kind of waiting, if I start hearing steps coming down, I'm turning it off, because I know my parents would not have.
There were so many anime like that. That was the edgelord era.
Yeah, but I also remember renting Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles and not feeling worried if my parents showed up. But anyway, so since we're going back to MD Geist, let's talk a little about you, because everyone has their first anime what were your roots as an anime fan that, you discovered an anime and then you decided you wanted to know more about it? What was that all like?
Okay, well, technically my first anime that wasn't that I knew was anime. Now, occasionally, I would watch something on Nickelodeon or something that was, ended up being Grimm's Fairy Tale Theater or whatnot. And I would know it was anime. It was Japanese because my mom told me that if it looked like that, it was Japanese. Very identifiable compared to what else was on TV in the era. These days, not so much. So I didn't really think anything of it. Although when I was maybe 5 or 6, my uncle had a big, rear projection television, 40 inches. And he had taped Warriors of the Wind, the hack and slash Nausica dub, off of HBO. And I thought, yeah, that was pretty good. I was 4, I was 5 or 6. I wasn't sentient yet. It didn't really stick until 92, 93. I was 12 or 13, and that's when Blockbuster started carrying the that starter pack that we talked about earlier. And Project ACO caught my eye, and also the youth restricted sticker caught my eye. I'm like, what the hell kind of cartoons have nudity and or are 17 plus? What? This looks pretty innocuous, but the girls are in bikinis on the back. What? So my mom wouldn't let us rent it, but my sister's very less supervised friend happened to buy a bootleg copy of it from a comic convention. I was growing up in Detroit at the time, so that was Motor City Comic-Con. And he loaned it to her, and my mom watched like 10 minutes of it and was like, this is fine. I think she saw the early scene of Aiko putting on her bra and thought that was it, which it really didn't get that much worse than that. Right. So I got to watch Project Aiko, and it melted my brain. It was just so unexpected and inexplicable and weird and kinetic and so nothing like anything I'd ever seen before. I was instantly hooked. I had to know more. I had to rent everything at Blockbuster. And over the course of the next year, I chipped away at their meager selection. And then I had to switch to a different video store that had more. And when I got to high school, a few years later, there was an anime club starting, and they had a fan sub of Irresponsible Captain Tyler. I started, when we started, we got kicked out of the school pretty quickly because they didn't know what this anime stuff was, and so they planned to give the vice principal a copy of Grave of the Fireflies, and they accidentally gave him Dominion Tank Police.
Oh,
whoops! By the way, if you haven't seen it, at about minute 10, there's a cat girl striptease scene. We couldn't use the school, so we moved to a public library, and I started. My dad had gotten us a copy of Quark Express from work, which was basically what we used before Adobe InDesign. And so I started writing a newsletter that got more and more elaborate, more and more professional looking, because that's just, I hate doing things half-assed. And, before I knew it, I branched off to a different group called Kodoche Anime, and we became a VHS fan subber. And then when I graduated high school, I didn't get into the college that I wanted to get into, and I knew I'd be bored out of my mind. So I started Anime News Network because at the time there was no way of finding out what was coming out or what had been announced or anything except for randos blogging on Rec Arts Anime or some other news group, and they were full of rumor and complete falsity, and it was almost useless.
Right. What was nice is that Anime News Network really legitimized anime news. Like, there was a place where it's like, I think you were one of the first fact checkers. I remember the first thing I read on that was the mix sign controversy with Stu Levy and
I'm actually very embarrassed about that. So So let's talk about that a little bit. So Mixzine was Tokyo Pop's, what later became Tokyo Pop's launch magazine. It was a manga magazine that eventually had some other things too. And manga magazines have a difficult time in the US because people don't think to go to magazines for serialized storytelling in this country.
Right. The only one that really seemed to work was Shonen Jump, but all the other ones kind of came and went without much.
Right. And by that time, the stuff was a known enough quantity that they could just sell it on the merits of Dragon Ball and such. But also magazines were dying. So
right.
At any rate, there was a bunch of they were rearranging the deck chairs, trying to make money at this, and they were struggling is the wrong word, but they were not really doing what they could be. And they made a number of controversial decisions, and they had one employee that was engaging with me who was actually quite disgruntled and dripping poison into my ear. Now, he was telling me all these, some half-truths, some lies. I'll never know what was true and what wasn't that he told me. But definitely he was embellishing, and he was definitely not being upfront with me. And he was very much using me to get back at his boss, Stu Levy. And so I decided, put on the journalism hat I got from my single semester high school journalism class, and I decided to go full inside edition and see what I could find out. And eventually it became clear that there was not much of an actual story there, aside from they made some decisions that pissed a few fans off.
Right.
So luckily I didn't actually air it, or I didn't actually post any of the falsehoods, but it was it was kind of a wet fart of a expose.
Yeah, well, but I do remember that I think a lot of people went to the website for that, although I think your much better work later on was when you were answering the Answer Man column. I think you were my favorite of the Answer Mans.
Well, thank you. That was many, many years later. So between then, so I actually only ran Anime News Network for about a year and some change. And that's when I went into this college. It was Michigan State University. Where are you, by the way?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, hey, whereabouts? I'm in Glendale.
I'll tell you when we're not on the air.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Oh, you're that easy to find, are you?
No. I've had one of my other channels. I had stalkers. So it's like, okay, I like to keep it as vague as possible when it's online.
Fair enough. Okay, so at any rate, I had moved to I'd gotten away from my college, and after spinning my wheels living with my parents for a semester, my dad found me a college in New York, film school of visual arts, and I'm like, is this really a possibility? And he says, yeah. So I go over there and quickly become immersed in the film scene. I'm a giant film nerd.
Me too. Over 5,000 discs.
Jesus, you beat me. I have like 1,500.
I have to keep a Quicken spreadsheet to keep track of everything so that I can look up to make sure that I don't accidentally make I've
made that mistake a lot lately. I've bought a lot of things. I'm just like, whoops.
Yeah, that's why I have the spreadsheet.
All right. So at any rate, I ended up losing interest with ANN pretty quickly, and I transferred it to a guy who wasn't quite up to the task, and then its current owner, Chris McDonald, took it over with a partner that has since retired. But anyway, while I was in New York, this was like the early .com era, so I had a brief stint at Sci-Fi Channel where they were trying to grow their website into its own thing. So they had like an anime colony, which was going to be its own self-sustaining thing, and it was a fiasco. And then a short time later, I got hired by almost dumb luck at Central Park Media, which was one of the, if not what, they weren't the biggest anime company by that time, but they used to be, and they had also been the publishers of Project Echo and Dominion Tank Police and MD Geist.
And one of my favorites, Now and Then, Here and There.
That came later. I was actually there for that.
Oh, awesome. I will never get rid of those DVDs until there's a re-release. I don't trust anyone to rescue that.
Who knows? I actually don't know why that hasn't been re-released. That's something I need to look into.
That would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you got hired onto Central Park Media, wore a lot of hats there, from what your ANN profile said, and you wore a lot of hats at Imagine Asian Entertainment, where you were video engineer, DVD author, acquisitions and programming, business development, and theatrical release manager. Well, is that an embarrassing part of your life, or should we, or
only personally?
Only personally. Well, we don't have to talk about that, especially since I don't I don't think a lot of people know what that is. So why don't we skip ahead then to when you founded MediaOCD, a name that I love personally.
The name actually comes from my sister making fun of me for what I would do is, during the DVD era, a lot of the US DVDs were not great compared to other countries and the Japanese imports and such. So what I would do, like a maniac, is I would import as many as I could from, I don't need the subtitles from this version. I need the English audio from this version. I need, the anamorphic widescreen video from this version, and I would assemble my own DVD. And
yeah, I remember reading a column, and I forgot what the anime was. Maybe it was My Neighbor Totoro, where it's like, oh, because I can do this, I can like put the original English audio with the anamorphic thing, and then you said add it. And by the way, I'm not going to do this for anyone else, so don't ask.
I think it was the manga video dub of Pat Labor 2.
Oh, okay. It was something.
So there was. Yeah, I'm sorry. I totally lost track of what we were talking about. Oh, yeah, MediaOCD. My company. That's what we're talking
Your company. That's, promotion, right?
What happened was it was very organic. One of my oldest and dearest friends is a guy named Michael Sinterniklaas, who you might know of. Michael runs NYAV Post, the dubbing studio. You might know them from a little movie called The Boy and the Heron.
Never heard of it.
I know. A little obscure.
Who are we kidding? No one believes us.
But he's been in the dub scene forever, and I got a name for myself at Anime News Network for being this like really kind of extreme video nerd who was able to do these crazy things with ANN's stillborn streaming site. So he asked if I would want to make Blu-rays because he wanted to package Blu-ray with dubbing contracts so he could be a one-stop shop. And I'm like, sure, I don't have Blu-ray authoring software. And he goes, I'll pay for it up front if you want to pay back in trade. And I'm like, sure, great. That sounds like a great opportunity because I wasn't rolling in it. And the cheapest Blu-ray authoring software was $3,000.
Yeah. Cheapest, which means it's not even very good.
Right, and it wasn't. But I cobbled together a show for Bandai called Kurokami, which was the first simuldub, and I made the dub only, at their insistence, Blu-rays for them, and they are garbage.
Well, I mean, no disrespect to the dub artist, but if you're only going to put the dub on there, then you're already fundamentally missing one of the main reasons why people buy discs.
Yeah, they were worried about reverse importing, and given how quickly some of my discs end up on Amazon Japan, I don't really blame them. But they, long story short is I got my feet wet making Blu-rays, and not long after, NIS America was getting into the anime business, and they had asked for my help figuring out DVD because they thought they knew what they were doing and they really didn't. So I had to come in there and show them the ropes and show them how not to screw up DVD. And when it came time for them to make the jump to Blu-ray, they realized pretty quickly that Blu-ray is really hard. So they just had me do it. And after a couple discs, they're like, hey, can you upgrade your software because this kind of sucks? And I went, sure. So I paid the small upgrade fee to get to the level that was actually acceptable, and I honed my craft from there.
Oh, okay. And then once you started honing your craft, you started getting more work through, like, you prominently do stuff through Discotech, right?
They're my main client right now, and they are, honestly, they've been releasing so much stuff for the past few years that it's kept my team of about 4 full-timers and lots of contractors going full blast for all that time. It's been a lot of product that they put out. Um,
Yeah. Well, some of the product, like I'm like kind of impressed that they've released it. Yeah, one of the titles, even though it's not anime related, I was so happy they released The Legend of Calamity Jane, because I remember seeing 2 episodes on Kids WB as a kid, loving it, and then one week it disappeared, and it was like, well, what happened to it? So it was great to actually finally have that to almost remind myself.
It's a really cool show, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wish the Masters were in better shape, but that appears to be just how it was made. So
Right. Well, also, it wasn't a show that was taken well care of. Like, to my understanding, I might be wrong, the reason the show had a swift cancellation is because there was like Columbine and there was like a lot of guns being used because, Western and everything. I don't know how true that is, but I also wouldn't be terribly surprised.
I'd have to look at some timelines there to fact check that. But the fact of the matter is, I think it was animated entirely in France. So the Masters were in PAL, and they were single field, which meant they were half vertical resolution. So I had to really jump through some hoops to make that video look acceptable, even in standard def.
Well, it looks perfectly fine.
Good.
And unlike other people I know who complain to Jerry Beck about every single little speck of grain or something on a DVD release, I understand, hey, some of these things are like 80 years old, or like they aired once and they were put in a vault and no one took care of them. Hey, I mean,
fun fact, Jerry Beck lives in my neighborhood. We're neighbors.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I know Jerry through a mutual friend. So
great guy.
Yeah, he is a great guy. I gotta have him on the show sometime. And the only thing he asks is like, your show doesn't take 3 to 4 hours like Stu's show does it? And it's like, no, we're lucky to hit an hour on mine. I don't even know if I'm not even that great of a talker. So, well, anyway, bottom line, you did a good job on that. I like the Kadocha Blu-rays.
That was me coming full circle, because that was the show I was famous for fan subbing.
Yeah. Well, I remember when the manga came out. I was introduced to Kadocha for the Tokyo Pop manga. Then I found out there was an anime, but of course, who was going to license it? So I downloaded the fan subs. So now I did buy the Funimation DVDs when they came out, even though the release was scarred, if you will, for legal reasons.
Yeah, it wasn't their fault at all. That was that was the talent agency of the boy band that did the opening theme.
Right. When I was younger, I remember being like on the Anime on DVD forums, which fun fact, I now write for Chris Beverage's The Fandom Post occasionally. Hey. So that was a great honor to finally get published on there. But I remember, like, in those days, like, how I was one of those, it has to be 100% uncut or I will not buy it. And that was the first time where it was like, after reading everything, it's like, well, maybe I can't hold this one against them. Maybe I should
and, if it's a show you want, at what point are you cutting off your nose to spite your face?
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's, there are some censored versions of movies or shows that I would not buy. I did not buy, for example, The Return of the Joker when I found out how much it was edited. I bought the uncut release a year later.
There you go.
But like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which has like 7 frames of animation altered.
It's fine.
It's stupid that they did that, but at the same time, it's also equally stupid for that to be a stumbling block for me.
Yeah.
So, but I also do like, I love that you guys, and it's probably a discotheque thing, like do promote releasing it as uncut as possible. Even with a dub controversy that's come up recently, which we will not talk about because
I can.
Yeah, because it seems kind of, there's some things about that sound kind of dumb from my perspective.
I'll tell you what's going on off the air if you like, but it's as dumb as it looks.
I kind of suspected that. Plus, as someone who prefers to watch subtitled, it's like I've never been I've never taken that much seriousness dubs. Although I have to admit, I watch dubs more these days because my wife, prefers to watch them for reasons I don't 100% understand. She will watch them subtitles, but she always asks, "Is there a dub?" And it's like, well, I guess it's a compromise.
Honestly, dubs are the only way I get to watch a lot of stuff now because I'm always working, and it's the only way to watch something while you multitask.
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm working on stuff, like that's the other reason I'm watching more dubs, is like there's certain things where it's like, okay, I can kind of listen to it so I can understand what's going on. Plus, dubs have just gotten so much better these days. I actually wrote an article for Game Rant about what started the dub versus sub debate, and it's like, guys, it was very like back then. Aside from the cost on VHS, like you well know, some dubs were like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon and stuff. Like they were just so drastically different in English. Like it was almost like watching a different show. But nowadays, like the dubs are so close. They even started dubbing some of the theme songs in some cases. That's like it's really just a matter of preference at this point. So,
yeah, and it always has been. It's always been a matter of preference. But yeah, there are some jank dubs out there for sure, especially from the 90s.
Yeah. Well, also voice acting has gotten better, I think, these days. Back then, some of the voice actors were they were not professionals, and you could tell. I won't name names because I've actually met some of them and I actually like them. But yeah,
But yeah, a lot of them really had no business doing that stuff.
Yeah. By the way, fun little side fact, and then we'll get to the main topic.
Okay.
I went to see a Sacramento music circus. Is that what it's called? Of Amadeus, and the guy who was playing Salieri sounded so familiar, and I couldn't put. So that's when I actually read the casting, and it was Matt K. Miller, Tenchi Muyo.
No kidding.
Yeah, and my friend was in the play, so I said, "Dude, can I hand you some Tenchi Muyo DVD so that you can go get him signed?" And he brought him to Matt, and Matt looked. He's like, "Oh, Tenchi, boy, this brings back memories." And apparently, he's actually now the theater director of the music circus in Sacramento now. So he kind of moved to stage. So that has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now, but that's just a fun story.
Well, I had some very well-heeled friends a few years ago that had a beach house that we went up to for 4th of July weekend a few times, 2 doors down from Bryan Cranston. So I came this close to bringing up Macross Plus to him, but I thought better of it, and I didn't. And I'm kind of regretful, but not.
He must have laughed at that. I mean, he probably has so much Breaking Bad stuff that's handed to him, or Malcolm in the Middle, but for him to like look at some of his original stuff, like, oh my, holy cow, you actually remember? Because I don't even think his real name was on there.
No, it wasn't. He was credited as Lee Stone.
Right, and those who are not aware, if you're like want to go to Hollywood and join SAG and everything, you're typically going to do anime voice work under a pseudonym. It's just
that doesn't happen as often anymore. It did back then because it was harder to it was harder to work as a union member on low budget things like that. They have ways of doing it now.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good to know. So you start out watching some very inappropriate anime at a young age that blow your mind. You start the #1 anime news site on there, which I almost want to ask you how it felt to see it get sold, but we're not going to. You work for Central Park Media, the company that shall not be named. You start MediaOCD, and then you do something that every anime fan dreams of doing. You buy something. And you bought something. And you buy an anime company. You buy AnimeEigo. Crunchyroll doesn't buy it. You do, a fan. So we should start we should talk about what led to the decision to do this and why you thought you wanted to. Well, I know why you wanted to do it, but in your words, why did you want to do? Why did you want to do it? And yeah, so let's start with that.
Okay, well, the story goes that for the last year or so, year and change, I've been secretly, well, I haven't been keeping it secret lately, working on a documentary about the history of the anime business in the US.
I want to see that. I want to see that.
I do too, but I have to finish it first.
But we'll get off this podcast and go finish. Oh, no, I'm kidding.
I'm a little cash poor at the moment. You might understand why.
Yeah, I can understand why.
Cash poor and busy out of my mind. So, I've done about 30 some interviews by now. In fact, I was just in London in November, interviewing all the old Manga UK guys. But at Otakon last year, I interviewed. There actually wasn't that many industry people at Otakon, so I was just like, is this a waste of my time? But one of the people that were there was Robert Woodhead. And Robert Woodhead is the original founder of AnimeEigo. But by the way, AnimeEigo is the first company dedicated to anime in the Western world.
Wait, AnimeEigo?
AnimeEigo, yes.
AnimeEigo. I've been saying it wrong for more than 20 years.
I know. We're acclimating you. We're getting you used to the proper way. AnimeEigo, AnimeEigo.
AnimeEigo. Okay. Well, that's embarrassing, but okay, continue.
So anyway, Robert and I have known each other for many, many years. And actually, MediaOCD has done most of the last, or I think all of the Blu-rays he's made in the last, 3 or 4 years, starting with the live-action samurai movie, Sword of, I'm going to screw this up, Sword of, damn it, this is my title now. I should know this.
It's not Sword of Berserk, is it?
No.
Okay.
Hold on, let me...
Well, that would be easy to pronounce, so I guess.
Here it is, Sword of Desperation.
Oh.
And then also the mass market version, not the Kickstarter version of Megazone 2-3, and then I think there was something since then.
I think they just recently ended a Kickstarter for one of the Macross movies. They got a lot more money for that than I thought they would.
I know, you and me both. Macross 2 is going to come to us at some point. It's just not. Hasn't been yet, but at any rate.
Although I will say, when Macross 2 got the money it did, I felt like the world was not quite as bad as it was yesterday.
I know, it was nice to see that level of support. So anyway, I interviewed Robert and asked him his whole back history while his wife Natsumi was standing just off camera glowering at him every time he said something he shouldn't have. And so after we finished rolling, he said, well, Justin, actually, I have something to ask you about. You asked me how much longer I want to do this before I retire, and the answer is not that much longer. So would you be interested in taking over the company? You seem like you have our, ethic of putting fans first and doing ludicrous things with anime that you love. And I'm just like, my eyes bugged out. I'm like, yes. Answer is yes. But I didn't want to conflict with my work with Discotech because they're my bread and butter, and I pay a lot of people out of that. And I don't want to have to, I don't want to have to find new work to support AnimeEigo before it makes money for me. So I ran downstairs to the dealer room where Selby, the owner of Discotech, was working in the booth, and I'm like, "Hey, this just happened," and he goes, "Yeah, great, we can sell your stuff here at the booth." I'm like, all I needed to hear. So we didn't think that it would happen quite this quickly, but we all sort of realized that there was no reason to delay it. So we started negotiating the contract, and it took a few months, and it was not cheap. Maybe cheap by anime company standards, but not cheap by my standards.
Right.
And now everyone knows, and it's like, holy crap. what do I do now except for all of this work coordinating the two companies?
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of work to be done. So before we get into what the future holds, like, how did it feel to sign that paperwork? And it's like, I just bought an anime company. Like, what was that feeling? Did you just like go home and lay in bed and stare at the ceiling, or like, how did that process look?
I think I went for sushi.
You went for sushi. Well,
Yeah.
just another day. Just another day.
Right. Well, I mean, sushi. It's the answer to everything. Let me think. So the thing is, it took a really long time to nail down that contract because I needed to find an entertainment lawyer because a normal lawyer can't do stuff like this. And then they realized that they needed a better entertainment lawyer, so they had to find another entertainment lawyer. And we probably went back and forth for about 4 months. So it took a long time to come to a final agreement. So honestly, it was just a sense of relief that was over. And then we did it again with the press release. So, you know, but that's just the business. That's just the business. But it's really exciting. And, you know, AnimeEigo is not what it was in the VHS era. There are a total of maybe like 10 discs in print, including all of the DVDs. But
well, looking at the background, they once had Kimigure Orange Road. They obviously don't have that anymore.
Well, you know, just literally just as I was coming on here to meet you on StreamYard, I was transferring all of their old liner notes to be preserved on my new AnimeEigo website. And it's 137 PDF files that I had to transfer over. Wow. They released a lot of stuff, and it's actually pretty remarkable how much that they put out.
Yeah.
So, well,
I mean, that might not have been. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the other problem is because all they've been doing for the last few years is re-releasing stuff over Kickstarter that was popular in the VHS era. They haven't really been doing any marketing. They haven't really been getting out there. End result is a lot of younger fans, you know, fans of our age remember them, but anyone under 30 probably doesn't.
No, they probably don't.
Right.
For being honest.
So that means that I have some work to do. There's I have to make back the money I spent.
Right.
B, and you know, I have a few ways of doing that, but I'm not quite there yet. B, right. we have to start being relevant again. That means, you know, getting out there, licensing new titles, going to conventions, and you know, I got to start slow. I can't really have my expectations too high on this, but you know, there's still a lot of vintage anime out there that could use a nice proper release, even stuff that was previously put out that didn't find a home before. So yeah, I think everyone has a laundry list of anime that they want rescued, and believe me, I do too. So we'll just have to see. I'm going next month with Natsume to Japan, and she's going to introduce me to all the licensors and everything, and we'll see what I can make happen.
Oh, okay. Can you help Sega find their paperwork? They seem to lose paperwork a lot.
Well, what are we specifically referring to?
Like last discotheque thing, like they lost the paperwork for the Sonic OVA music, and then it's like, oh yeah, you also lost paperwork for the Archie Comics thing, which results in that big lawsuit. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, the Sonic OVA thing goes a little deeper than that. The main producer of that show went out of business, and the thing is, without all the contracts with all of the staff that are supposed to get sign-off rights on anything that happens with the show, you can't do anything because you don't even know who to talk to.
Okay, so interesting that on the Discotheque live stream they singled out like the music paperwork, but yeah, the company going out of business, that would make just as much sense, if not more.
Yeah.
So well, I have faith that you will bring AnimeEigo AnimeEigo. Did I do it right?
AnimeEigo.
AnimeEigo. That you like
It's
you
not,
you
there we
people.
go.
If you people think this is a skit, like no, say something for 20 years and then all of a sudden you find out you were doing it wrong. It really.
Well, you know, it's funny when I made the announcement, I put out that that old early VHS logo that Robert programmed in assembly on his Macintosh 2 to you know, and it shows AnimeEigo, Eigo being Japanese for English, disintegrating into the AnimeEigo logo. And I got several tweets going, "Oh my God, I never put that together before. I feel like an idiot." So you're not the only one.
Okay, good. In fact, speaking of that logo, for those who were interested, this is what it looks like.
Actually, I could use your opinion on this. Do you think I should throw a VHS filter over this?
A VHS filter, that would be cute. I'm not gonna lie. It's one of those. I mean, I think some of the younger kids wouldn't get it, but since you're kind of reintroducing the company, what the heck? You might as well. I mean, if Japanese people are recording the Urusei Yatsuda anime and watching it on VHS tape in Japan, you could put a VHS filter over this logo.
We get a lot of requests for VHS copies. I don't know how many people will actually buy them, and honestly, you and I are old enough to remember VHS and being maddened by how terrible it was.
I'm gonna reach over. Those listening to podcasts won't see this, but VHS tapes. I do have a few. Oh, it's not really showing, but Three Caballeros, Small Soldiers, Sailor Moon, Super S, all brand new, but they're for decorations. Like people say, "Oh, why don't you open that and watch it?" And it's like, because there's no reason to. It sucks.
Yeah,
it was just
VHS
what we had at the time.
Horrendous. And also, it's like $8 a unit just to make them.
Yeah, right. Discs are so much cheaper. That's by the way, folks, that's why Nintendo games, when they cost like $70, $80 for N64, went down in price when they went to GameCube, because discs are just that much more cheaper.
Yeah, it's just, you know, discs are really nice and cheap to make. Even Blu-ray is not very expensive compared to VHS tape.
Right. The biggest expense is paying Sony their cut, I believe, from what I've heard.
Actually, it's not Sony. It's the AACS, the company that makes the encryption. That's mandatory part of the spec.
Oh, okay. Oh, see, you learn something new every day. Where Blu-ray royalties go, how to properly pronounce AnimeEigo. This is for those of you who are listening to the podcast version, take note that my guest host is willfully laughing at me, and I think it's totally justified in this case.
It is one of those things where it's just like, yeah, if it was anything more or less basic, it would be understandable. But it's AnimeEigo.
That's AnimeEigo. It's like, oh well. I'm sure I will get it sooner or later. Especially since now that I'm looking at this Otaku no Video, it's still in print.
Not only is it still in print, there's still a few of the Kickstarters left. The Kickstarter Blu-rays left.
Is that the premium Blu-ray set?
Yes. So you can still go to animeigo.com and snag one of those. Now,
I'm going to do it right now while we continue.
You should. So those are still the Kickstarter. So here's how all this is going to work. Anything that was made for Kickstarter, Robert and Natsumi are still going to handle. And they still have at least one, maybe two more Kickstarters in the kiln that haven't been announced yet. And that's going to be all them. It's everything else that is me. So right now we're working on getting our warehousing in order and opening our own web shop. But all of those old Kickstarter discs, I think there are still discs left for Riding Bean and for Otaku no Video. You can still only get them from the AnimeEigo website. And once they're gone, only then can I put out a mass market version.
I see. What? Well, I'm checking out on this. I just don't want anyone to see my credit card information.
You can do that after the show. It's not going to sell out while we're taping.
Oh, that is true. True.
But
that's where some
seriously,
of my...
so Writing Bean and Otaku no Video are almost out. So if you want to get your Kickstarter Blu-ray copy, I would go get it now. That's not going to last much longer.
Okay. Well, take his advice, everyone. So you kind of hinted a little bit about what you hope to accomplish with AnimeEigo.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. I got it right.
Also, merch. I didn't bring up merch. I really want to do some T-shirts, do some drip, as the kids say. I think the world's first anime publisher outside of Japan, that was founded in 1988 and still kicking, that should have some street cred. That
should, and also one of the things that is like not spoken about as often, but there really is more money in merchandise than physical media and streaming, for that matter. So
maybe we'll see.
We'll see.
I'm definitely gonna kick the tires a little bit. I'm also not sure how much money there is in licensed merch, which by the time you have to split the royalty with Japan and such.
Right. Oh, no, exactly. Well, so you want to do more merchandise? Are you going to actually license some shows now that you have AnimeEigo?
Well, what would be the point if I didn't?
Well, I mean that's true. True. Well, the only reason I'm asking is because there are some people who believe that when you buy a legacy media company, like, you're buying it for its past, not its future. And those people, I want to to point out that's not quite how this works.
I was going to say that if I'm only going to be allowed to sell the handful of titles they already put out, that was not worth the money I paid for it. Let's put it that way.
Right. No, that was probably the dumbest question you will be asked tonight on this stream.
I mean, not necessarily a dumb question. Some people care about, freezing a brand in amber to be preserved for, future generations to look at as if it were a museum piece. But I want to keep the AnimeEigo name relevant. I want to make it something that people still care about, rather than just the increasingly elderly among us.
Right. Well, I have like a fairly big Disney following, because I talk a lot about Disney, and I have a lot of the fans who say, "Oh, if I were Disney, I would do this." And basically going back to Walt's day, and I always quote Roy Disney, where it's like, guys, even Walt's nephew Roy Disney said, "Look, if you're doing that, you're running a museum. You're not running a business."
That's the joy of being a fan, though, is not having to worry about making payroll and keeping licensors happy, and keeping the bank account full. Or if you want to be a little bit shittier about it, it's easy to criticize from the cheap seats.
That's true.
Yeah. The thing is, this is a business. It's always been a business. And wouldn't it be against the ethos of a company to suddenly become a not-for-profit, library instead?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The funny thing is, with anime fans, I sometimes don't know if they understand that, because I watch all these videos about the Crunchyroll raising their prices, and the number one thing is hey, look, anime fans are cheap. I'll just go back to pirating, and it's that's not a reason to pirate. This is a business at the end of the day.
Yeah, the thing is, they say stuff like that. You have to give people a reason to support you, and it shouldn't just be access to the content, because although access to the content, it might be the most convenient way of going about it. The fact of the matter is, you have to make people want to, patronize your company. And that's something that I work really hard at and have done at Discotech. And it's something that I'm going to be working very hard at now that I have my own brands. I was just talking about this with someone else a few days ago, but if you remember, the halcyon days of Funimation were the days when they had these people called brand managers who were giant nerds themselves and were constantly pushing both Japan and their own staff to do better, to, make packaging fancier, come up with interesting marketing hooks, things like that. And also Funimation had like people like, Adam Sheehan and Justin Rojas, who were, the face of it and could, show fans around the office and show them what they, what they're trying to accomplish and how hard they're all working. If you're, what it means to be a fan these days is to be, if not bought in, at least concerned with that process. If you don't understand where the publisher is coming from, you're less likely to support them. So it's always going to be my MO to bring the fans in as much as I can get away with, to basically explain why things are the way they are, what we can do, what we can't do, and basically show what we're doing, show all of our cards. Because look, there is not much competition in the vintage anime space, and Blu-ray is not exactly a growth market these days, so it's not like people are chafing at the bit to get into it. There's not really that much to be lost by being open with people. There just isn't.
Right. Well, and I do remember, like, one of the reasons I really loved being on the Anime on DVD forums back then was because industry people went on there, because it was a small enough market that you could go to a message board and kind of get an idea of, like, open up, like, this is what we're going to do. I remember when Dallas McDowell, who was actually the first industry person that I interviewed on my old website, thecomicbookguy.com, and when he announced that Negima was going to be censored, oh boy, there was such an outcry on that forum.
You mean Dallas Middaugh?
Oh yeah, that's okay. See, I pronounce names terribly.
It's like, I only know one Dallas in this industry, and there's not that many people named Dallas.
Yeah. He worked for Del Rey Books, and
I know Dallas real well.
Okay, yeah, he was one of the first people I interviewed in this industry way back when. But I remember when he announced that Negima was going to have to be changed for American audiences, like, there was enough of a pushback on those forums that, like, a few days later, it's like, so we're not going to censor it after all. We'll shrink wrap it, and that was probably for the best. That's one of the things I'm kind of worried about with, like, Crunchyroll becoming so big, is that when issues like this may occur, that it's like, is there anyone to really talk to express that that's not something you want, or are they just too big to listen now? I don't know.
Yeah,
an 82% price increase is not a great start.
Well, time will tell, but that said, I don't have any ill will towards Crunchyroll. Those kids work hard. I just wish people could know how hard they work.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's a disconnect.
Yeah, and I have friends who work at Crunchyroll too. So
So I'm sure you hear the stories of what's going on behind the scenes. You're just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Wish I could share that.
Mm-hmm. There's something like there was one time where I was told in confidence something very big, and I'm not even going to hint about what it is, but this was earlier in my career, and so I was like, oh, I know what's going on with that. Like, oh, what is it? It's like, I can't tell you. And now I've gotten so good, I don't even hint that I know something. That's how professionalism works.
It is. And the thing is, if you have fans or if you have friends in the business, they'll tell you. It's really, it's not a state secret or anything. It's not the nuclear codes. It's just one of those things where, like, if a couple, I mean, you see these, there are some truly unhinged people out there that, or just, fans that don't understand how things work, who are also disproportionately passionate, who will take that little nugget of information and run way in the wrong direction with it.
Right, and sometimes I'll turn it into something that it really isn't at the end of the day.
Oh,
Or
like
shouldn't be the big...
it gets really gross. Like, these people have the potential to ruin our lives and have done. There was a friend of mine who shall not be named that actually got charged at a convention with a knife, and had to be wrestled to the ground over an anime.
Yeah, it's and I also saw kind of like Frontline when there was like some controversy over some voice actors playing out on Twitter, and after a while it's like, I don't think either side is really in the right here. This is just getting so ugly.
It's, fandom is capable of great things and horrible things, and we just have to take the good with the bad.
Yep. And I try to appreciate, like, when the fans come together and they make Macross 2 of all things. Because even as a Macross fan, that's not my favorite one, but they come together and it's like, no, we want this.
Yeah. I'll tell you what really made me happy is how well the Discotheque Berserk pre-order is doing. Have you seen this?
I saw that they were doing very well on Amazon. I have pre-ordered it. Also, I'm gonna well, you share first, and then I'm gonna share like a little hack that I have for that.
So Amazon alone is reporting over 6,000 units sold.
Okay.
Publicly. And that, from what we can tell, that they're not always accurate, but from what we can tell, that seems kind of accurate in this case. We can't really, it's hard to really know until they actually put their order in.
Mm-hmm.
And Crunchyroll Store, formerly Right Stuff, is also reporting a lot of sales. So this is looking like, the big one. And this is a show that we really put our heart and soul into, and we rushed it out. As soon as we signed that contract, we're like, get it out, do it. But we took great care in syncing up the old NYAV post dub, in prettying up the subtitles. Getting all the extras freshly done. We really went as far with this as we possibly could. There wasn't that much in terms of extra stuff, but we have everything that we were able to include. And just to see people lose their freaking minds over that announcement it doesn't get better than that at the end of the day. Do you have any idea how few people in this world slave away all day on something and have people lose their minds over it when they finally know that it's coming?
There have been times, but sometimes I think people really don't understand. Like, I've never been in that situation where I've made something and saw people really excited to see it.
It's so rare. We're probably, we're the occasional, superhero movie. And, even then that ends up being a disappointment half the time. And, that's a new, album released by a beloved pop music star or something. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, but no, I was in the Discotheque live stream when you announced Berserk, and like, as someone who can like kind of watch the announcement and then kind of, I admit I kind of tune out to the special features. I kind of look at how the chat responds. When Berserk came up, like, the chat went wild. It was like, there was no, well, you're gonna have this special feature, you're gonna do this transfer. Like, it was just like, oh my gosh, it's coming back. The one thing that I did say after the excitement wore off, if you will, is like, is it gonna have a red Blu-ray case? And I think you gave a reason that no, and was there a reason there was no red Blu-ray case?
Yeah, the reason is they're really hard to source reliably. We could probably get it from one print run if we were lucky, but then we wouldn't be able to get it for subsequent print runs, and then people would be angry about that.
Yeah. So I created my own personal hack for this one. This is not a Discotech sponsored thing, and I'm gonna have to describe this for podcast people, but the Turning Red Blu-ray, which is readily available, has a red case. So I bought an extra copy of Turning Red so I could swap the labels when your release comes out.
I love it. And that shows a level of dedication. Yeah, it's amazing how much easier sourcing these things are when it's Disney and you're buying like a million of them.
Yeah, I think it shows a huge level of I have way too much free time on my hands sometimes.
Well, hey, you know what? You can have a copy of Turning Red in a blue Blu-ray case.
Yeah, I already have it on 4K. 4K. Like I've now bought this thing twice. Although it's a pretty good movie. Like I don't, and especially since
Pixar was, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, especially since Pixar was kind of screwed on that one, and Luca, and Soul. I don't mind buying that one twice. I suppose now I just need someone to release it on 3D. I'll be waiting a while, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think anyone cares about 3D anymore.
I do. I also have the number one 3D blog on the internet for whatever the heck that's worth.
Oh wow! All right.
I get over 10,000 unique visitors every month on that one.
You'll be the guy watching it on an Apple headset in a couple of years.
What a sad admission. I have considered getting an Apple Pro Vision just to be able to watch some of these 3D movies again easier, but I prefer to watch it on a TV. Like, I don't know, maybe the Vision Pro is a nice device, but when I was driving out, I saw a couple walking, guy and a girl, holding hands, and the guy had Apple Pro headset on his head, and I couldn't help but think, we're doomed. We're just doomed.
I'm sometimes fan of Scott Galloway, the NYU Business School professor that has a podcast and is kind of a outspoken business tech guy. And he refers to the Apple Vision Pro as a how much is it? $2,000?
Oh, it's like $3,500.
Yeah, $3,500 prophylactic.
Well, he is definitely a wordsmith. I bet you there's some viewers right now like going to Google like, what does that mean? But yeah, no, that seems appropriate.
Yeah, it's just however dorky Google Glass this looks a million times worse.
Yeah. Oh, the Google glasses and the Google glasses became like a controversial thing because it's like,
well, the camera, yeah, people were
camera. That's what I was about to say.
People had not yet fully admitted to completely burning their privacy rights, but at the same time, you know, the thing Google Glass was meant to be worn everywhere. The Apple Vision Pro headset is not. The only use I can think of for it is using on an airplane. But
that would be a good use for it because even though someone says like, oh, but you can watch your movies immersive and things like that, it's like, yeah, but like with the 3D TVs, like the glasses were an inconvenience and those were nothing. Imagine having this huge thing on your head.
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's there yet to me, but I don't think it's there yet to most people. So,
right. It's just terrifying how many people I've seen actually wear it in public while they're doing things that I would not think they should be doing while they're wearing it.
That's because you live in Los Angeles and everyone here is starved for attention because their daddies didn't love them.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. Although my dad loves me and I love him, so.
Yeah, okay. Mine too.
Oh, that's good to hear. So anyway, folks, we could talk random stuff all day, but you know what? We want to be mindful of the time, and plus, we actually went over an hour, which is longer than I usually do it. So thank you so much. Well, first of all, Justin, thank you for coming to talk your career, your life, and just random things with me.
My pleasure. This is a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you. Maybe we'll have you back someday if this wasn't too terrible.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to.
Okay, awesome. So for everyone else, if you are watching this on YouTube, please comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and you can also check this out in podcast form on Spotify, Apple, Deezer, Google, whatever, podcast service you like to use. And take care, everyone.